Hello and welcome to section 6. In this section, we're going to talk about common errors which developers encounter during the development of HTML5 games. While in the previous section we've talked about testing and debugging on various devices. In this video, we're going to discuss about common errors which developers encounter in the code, and we're going to discuss about solutions for these problems. During HTML5 game development, developers usually encounter similar errors during the development process. We're going to discuss about a couple of errors which developers usually encounter during Create.js game development. Now, one of the first issues is the Create.js version. Sometimes during the development process, the Create.js version may change. For example, we're currently using May 21st version of Create.js, as you can see, date here. Since then, new versions have been released. Usually developers tend to go to the latest version and implement it in their code, but sometimes it's not the best idea. APIs may change and the syntax may also change. So if you're working on developing a game and you wish to complete it, you should think twice before moving on to the next Create.js version, and it may be best to remain with the version you started developing on the game. The two options you have is either save a local version of the Create.js library and work with it during the development process, or never change the CDN URL which you are using during the development process. Another error which developers may encounter usually happens when they use external JavaScript files. During our course, we've written the JavaScript in the HTML file. Now, this enabled us to avoid any errors during the development process, but for larger projects, it's usually not a good idea to write the code inside the HTML file. So usually in an external JavaScript file, which you usually load in the head tag, and what usually happens is that developers don't write the onload event in the body tag, and since the canvas loads basically after the JavaScript file has loaded, then the page will basically not load, and if we take a look at the console you can see nothing is loading. Now this is basically because the init function has not been called, so we'll add a call at the beginning of the code to the init function. And if we'll run the page again, you can see we encounter an error in line 379. Now line 379 trying to find the width of the canvas, and since the canvas loads after the JavaScript file has loaded, we need to make sure that the page has loaded completely before running any script. So in this case, during the course, what we did is we placed the canvas tag before the script. But when developing using an external JavaScript file, which will always load before the canvas, we make sure that the body tag has an onload event which calls the init function in that file, making sure that no code runs before the canvas has completely loaded. Another common error for Create.js developers is the fact that they sometimes forget to add the stage update command. The stage update command basically refreshes the view and displays the latest state of the stage. Now sometimes developers forget to add that, whether to the tick function or to various locations where they made visual changes, and they don't see the visual changes that they made in the code. So if we forget to add the stage update command in the tick, which is called in every frame, we may reach a point. For example, take a look at the lives I currently have in the game. I have 3 lives. Start the game. Now I have 2 lives, a brick has disappeared, and my score is 100. That's because in the tick function I don't have the stage update call, and I rely on other stage update calls which happen at the beginning of the game and at the end of the game. So the progress of the game is not visible because I'm not updating the stage at any point, apart from the beginning and the end of the game. So as you can see, I can play again. The game runs in the background, things actually happen. As you can see, the ball hit the bricks and everything disappears, but I'm not seeing the progress of the game. So it's important to make sure that the stage update command is called whether after you make certain visual changes which you want to see updated, or during any stage of the tick function. So we need to make sure that the stage update function is called whether after we make a certain change in the visuals or at any stage of the tick function. This way you don't have to deal with the stage update because it happens in every frame. Last error I want to talk about is the set bounds. Now, during the development of this game, we've had some generic functions. For example, our check collision function was pretty generic. The ball element sometimes hit the pedal and sometimes it hit the brick. So in order to make the function as generic as possible, I had to make sure that the hit element will be able to provide the function with its width, because the pedal had a certain width and the brick had a certain width. Since Create.js doesn't provide the width and the height of a certain element out of the box, we have to set it manually. So whenever I create an object, for example the brick or the pedal, I had to use the setBounds function to state its width and its height. So I'll be able to use the getBounds function later on in the code to see what the width and the height of that element was. Had I not used the setBounds, I wouldn't have any way to know what the width of the hit element would be or what its height would be. Well done! Now we've reviewed some common errors in Create.js. In the next video we'll discuss about troubleshooting.